Welcome to the Glorious Pro Wrestling Podcast, where two nice boys talk about pro wrestling. I'm Andy. With me is Danny, like always. And today we have a special guest. This episode, we're going into our first anniversary, Danny, believe it or not. And we have a special guest. Appearances at Boom Pro Wrestling, ASW, Dusk Pro, LPW. A lot of Canadian promotions here, but also here in Portland and the Pacific Northwest here, also with Prestige and DOA. We have Casey Ferreira. How are you doing?
Doing good, yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, like I said, one of my first podcasts, so it's nice to get more reps in the area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go first question off the bat because this is something that, you know, Danny and I have argued here, and you can set the record straight here.
Yep.
Vancouver, BC, Pacific Northwest.
Dude, whatever. Go ahead.
Oh, that's the question? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so for all the times people say it in their promos and stuff. I hear that term so much in wrestling. So, yeah, I would say so.
Andy, we squashed that beef so long ago.
You just won't believe me, man. You just won't believe me. Well, thank you for joining us. What have you been up to? How has it been?
Man, it's been good. Yeah, I mean, staying busy, staying on the road. I feel like with all those companies you mentioned, like in Canada, they're very spaced out. So a lot of fun travel time has been happening. Just trying to keep the calendar busy during the holidays, which is a little harder than the rest of the year.
Yeah. Speaking of the year, any highlights, any standouts? It's a time of reflecting. Anything stand out to you? Top 5 people you've wrestled? Top 5 places you've wrestled? Or just the top 1? 5's a lot to ask. We could really fill some time with that. Favorite place you've wrestled this year? Newest place you've wrestled this year? How you feeling?
So many questions, but that
I'm like that. I'd be like that.
Man,
We'll take one at a time.
Yeah, where do I start? I mean, the year started off very eventful because I think it was like almost like January 3rd is when I packed my car to drive to LA, and that's where I was for a while. So, I mean, that was a lot of fun. I managed to get a couple matches in LA while I was there, even though I was mainly there for training. I had a couple matches. So, but I'm not pandering. I think I'd have to say Portland is like my.
Oh, you stop!
I'm not. But the Cascadia Cup is like the highlight of my year, honestly. Well, match wise, it's the highlight of my year.
Fantastic event too.
But okay, actually, second, I have to say the New Japan Academy showcase was.
Oh, I mean, yes.
That was like because that was like 3 months of preparation and like fully just focusing on that. So that was the best I felt finishing up. Like going past the curtain, I was like, okay, it felt like I was planning a match for 3 months straight. Is what it felt like. So
wow,
yeah.
So you were in LA for New Japan training.
Yeah. I did the New Japan Academy course from January to April, I believe.
So can you walk? Is it just eat, sleep, breathe, wrestle while you're in that mode, or?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's not like we were in there like 5 days a week, although I wish I could have been, but as much as they'll allow us to be in there for sure, just the opportunity to train in the LA dojo was massive. But yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody about this recently. It's like as long as I was in LA, like all I was thinking about was wrestling, and if I wasn't training, I was in the gym like for wrestling, and it feels so good to just focus on the one thing. So hopefully one day that's what life is. But for now, we're all grinding. You know how it is.
Oh yeah, and you're well on your way. You're just gonna eat, sleep, wrestle, repeat. Is there what is like and you could totally say no. What is probably the biggest thing that you took away from that experience?
Well, I'm pretty young anyways, so it was like a great experience just to like, learn how to
Go
live
through.
life, you know?
Yeah.
But in terms of wrestling, like New Japan has always been the goal, like from day one, from before I started. Like that's why I got
Really?
into it. Yeah, like junior heavyweight division, like best of super juniors, like that's what I was watching, and like that as always will
Yeah, we
always be
could
the
tell.
goal.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
good
good
shit
to
too.
hear. Good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so uh, my number one takeaway is like, okay, now I really know what they're looking for. You know, like it's not like it's a blind race. Like I'm coming away with the knowledge of like what I have to work on and feeling confident that I'm like doing the right thing, you know, or working towards the right thing. So
Absolutely. You've definitely, yeah, it's kind of funny. And we'll get to it really quickly, but just how wrestling can be so mysterious when you just take it in for the very first time.
yeah.
And then, yeah, understanding that. Speaking of which, so like, when did pro wrestling just enter your life? Not when you decided you wanted to be a pro wrestler, just like, what was your first experiencing pro wrestling?
Uh, I think no. Okay, I know. It was third grade. I like went to a
There
friend's
we go.
house,
There
and
we
it
go.
was oh, this is the kind of answer you're looking for sure. Uh,
Yeah.
it was Cody Rhodes with the plastic mask on the TV.
Oh
Really? It was
man.
Yeah,
dashing Cody Rhodes.
and like I'm not saying I saw that and I was like, oh, this is it. I was like, okay,
No, no,
what's
no, no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this is just like the first
yeah. I was
thing
like,
that's
it was just enough for me to be like, what's going on here? And then I watched just long enough for them to drop like the video package of what had just happened with CM Punk, with the Summer of Punk, like going into like the Triple H match or whatever. And CM Punk, okay, that's what got me. Like CM Punk was my top as a kid, and like still like one of my favorites. So that's what got me for sure.
hell yeah. At what point then did that evolve? Did
Uh,
you start watching regularly? Were you hooked?
as a
Trying to go
kid,
to
like I was
events?
I was pretty hooked for sure. And I missed the boat so hard because I grew up in Campbell River, BC, which is a small town on Vancouver Island, and I actually just wrestled there last week, which was a trip. But
Heyo.
the wrestling school is in Campbell River, or at least was for a long time, and you know that's actually where Judas Icarus started up. So like
Got it. Wow.
I had
Okay.
no idea though, and they probably wouldn't have let me train as a child anyways. But I'm like, how did I miss that? But a lot of people I find like find wrestling as a kid, and then they stop watching, and then they come back, and then they're like, oh, I want to be a wrestler now, which is totally what happened to me. Like I stopped watching, and then maybe around like 14 or 15, Kenny Omega, Okada, found that, and then it's like a whole new light that I was watching it, you know?
And that's a way different style than the E, uh,
Yeah.
especially at that time. God, yeah, those are great. I love fucking Kenny. Well, I'm a huge Kenny Omega mark, so
Yeah. And
anybody
like
says the name, I'm just like, yeah.
and like watching Omega Okada to me now is like, or at least mentioning Omega Okada is like, what's it like? It's like saying that Ocarina of Time is like the best game of all time. It's like we know, you know, so you just like don't talk about it. But then I remind myself, I'm like,
Where you at? You just said a very important thing. Is that what you truly believe?
oh no, are we opening up a Pandora's box right now? Because like, kind of.
Do you think Ocarina of Time is the best game of all time?
I think it's my favorite. It's not the best, but it's my favorite. You know.
Well, it's close to the best. I don't know what is if it ain't.
Okay, okay. I'm back. I'm a coward right now. I'm backtracking because I feel like I struck a nerve. But if
Oh
you're
no, you
with
don't
me,
have to be
Gotta
diplomatic.
stand
This is
firm.
this
yeah,
is your time. This is fucking Casey time.
yeah, it's up there. Yeah,
And so yeah, as you were saying, Okada and Omega, it's like, oh yeah, everybody
it's
knows.
probably about time for me to watch it again. Honestly, it's been a while.
Do you prefer one out of the three? Do you like the first one the best? Do you like
Like I
number
think I
three?
do like the first one the best. Honestly, yeah, because I think like as a fan, the second one was like very theatrical, but like as somebody watching to like glean something new from it every time, I think I just go with the first one.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's a the first match in like a lot of trilogies or continuations is always that special, like first time
Yeah.
that they're doing this. So
Except for Bait versus Dunn, the second one is easily the best one in that one.
I just feel like he was more shredded in the second one, and I was just like, fuck, he looks ready to fucking go on that Omega Okada. I might be wrong. I might be way off base, but
He was
like,
pretty shredded in all of them, honestly.
I know, yeah, it was
Yeah.
just on another level, on the level, the bar. So New Japan, when did that become kind of like your singular focus? Just right then and there when you saw the Omega Okada?
No, I think that was just an opening for me to be like, oh, like this is a whole other type of thing, like just being focused in like bell to bell. But then I started watching more, and like Hiromu Takahashi struck my eye, and like obviously like Osprey was killing it in the junior heavyweights of that time, and like El Desperado, guys like that. But I mean, the whole way they like structured things in the junior heavyweights, especially Hiromu's matches, were just like, oh, I've never seen anything like this before. So uh, I think that's when I was like, this is how I want to wrestle if I'm wrestling. Although a lot of those questions got answered once I started, and I was like, oh man, I think today I'm definitely not the wrestler I imagined when I was a kid. So life takes you
how
in
so?
places you can't predict. I don't know. Well, I mean, I never did gymnastics or anything as a kid. Um,
Okay.
and I never imagined that I would do like, I don't know, like aerial stuff or like high flying. I thought I would be like a grounded technical wrestler, and then
Really?
yeah, and then my trainer was like, go on the top rope, try it out, and I was like, oh shoot, it's pretty fun. And and then it just never stopped, and now this is how I wrestle.
I mean, you do a great frog splash, so I very much appreciated using a frog splash as a finisher. So that's really cool. What kind of like led you to using that as your finisher?
Oh man, it was kind of an accident, honestly. Like one of my, I think maybe it was like my third or fourth or fifth match was with NEW in Vancouver, and it was like a 6-man tag with Elliot Tyler and Eddie Osborne, kind of just giving me a spot as a new guy, which I'm very appreciative of. And for some reason, I was the guy getting the pin at the end, and I was like, I don't have a finisher, I don't know. And I was gonna do a swanton, but then somebody else on the show was doing a swanton, so they're like, just do a frog splash, and it just like turned out pretty good. And they're like, keep doing that. I was like, okay, sure, and never stopped.
Nice.
Looked good, felt good, popped the crowd. Why mess with anything that works, right?
Yeah.
When it came to sort of finding that style, like you said, you wanted to be a technician. Where did that come from? How did you develop that? Who inspired that?
Like I was watching so much like UK indies when I was younger, because when I was like a teenager, I think that was like the peak of like what culture pro wrestling had just started, and like, but
It's like
NXT
that Cody
UK,
Rhodes leaving WWE era.
yeah, yeah, and like NXT UK had just started, and like Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne are like some of my like favorites,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I like that's what I say is like Pete Dunne, like that's how I thought I was gonna wrestle, just like watching. Um, I
Damn, yeah.
yeah, like I just like gravitated towards that style, but of course I loved high flyers as well. I just didn't think that would be me, but yeah, doing wrestling and watching wrestling, very different things. Yeah.
Do you still keep up? Do you still like watch or?
Uh, I don't watch like weekly episodic wrestling or anything, but of course I know I'm watching like every day. Just trying to find something new all the
There's
time.
so much to watch.
But it's definitely like,
Currently.
I don't know. If a fan's gonna run into me, it's like in a cafe watching like mid 2000s New Japan on my laptop at a cafe or something.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily watch like, but I mean, it's so easy to keep up with what's going on with like social media and stuff with the major companies. You just kind of keep up that way, or is it like not even on your radar and you're just like fucking checking out the stuff from a couple of years ago?
No, like if I hear something like really good came out, then I'll definitely check it out. Uh, and like I'm on that New Japan World for sure, but I can't pay for any other subscriptions. I had to draw my battle lines, but
Totally.
yeah, but I'm definitely like a watch one match and then watch it again in like slow motion and then try and get through it without rewinding, and then at that point it's like no time for another one, you know?
Interesting.
So
That's
yeah, so the way you watch is like very analytical, would you say?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I got my book beside me.
It's like not even like a brain off thing anymore. It's like if it's on, you're on, and you're taking away something from it no matter what.
For sure. I mean, if the match is good enough though, like they'll get me hooked and I'm just going
Sure.
for sure. Yeah.
the way that you approach it. Like you're not watching the week to week. Like I think there's a lot of people that don't watch week to week because they don't want to like replicate anything that's week to week.
Right.
But you watching it from like years before, New Japan years before, is there anything that you adapt from that where you're watching that regularly into your style now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, also with that first part, I think it's good to watch to make sure you're not doing what everybody else is doing because that's totally happened. Like I try to keep enough of a pulse because I'll be like, "Oh, look at this sick idea," and then some guy on Ring of Honor is like already doing it. I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, at least I know." Uh, but yeah, I think generally I want to be as unique as possible regardless of the time frame. But for sure, yeah, I've been watching a lot of like Noah and stuff like that, and like back to old Hayabusa matches and just being like, man, why doesn't anybody do this stuff anymore? You know?
Totally, yeah. And then once you bring it into the ring on your time, I'm sure that shit just gets over just like it did way back then.
I hope so. I
Um,
don't know. We'll see.
I think it's working, man. I think the crowd response, at least when we saw you, I think it's going well. Um, and you're keeping yourself real busy. Do you have some favorite folks that you like to work with? Do you have like some favorite opponents?
Favorite opponents, for sure. Yeah. Um,
Talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah.
Who you got? Who you like?
Top top three, four. Well, okay, Travis
Let's
Williams,
go three.
100%.
Keep it three.
I think I've worked him singles like maybe four or five times, and the first one was like one of my first matches, and I'm always like so grateful for that. Because I don't know how, but like I'm still like very proud of that match, and like I think it took us three more matches for me to personally top the first one for me. Um, but every time I wrestle him, it's like a level up for me. Just the way he tackles things, it's wild. And like other than that, like Miles DeVille was also like super instrumental in my beginning, uh, and I'm just so excited for him to come back because I hope we can tear it up again. Just like one of the most innovative wrestlers I've ever like met or wrestled. Um, and like more recently, wrestling Jaden was like a breeze. Like he's so good, and I want to wrestle him even more because I feel like even though because I wrestled him for Prestige, and then he came up to my home turf as well for Boom, and both times were
Nice.
like very happy with the match, and it was just like so easy to work with. And then my coaches, of course, every time I get to wrestle those guys. So Nicole and Artie and Tony and Billy Slade.
And
Excellent.
where did you train?
Lionsgate Dojo in Vancouver.
Nice.
How do you notice a difference between, say, the Southern California scene, which you were mostly training in, the sort of US, Northwest, and the Vancouver scene? Are there any sort of differences that you've picked up or noticed? Is it style wise, crowd wise?
Well, for sure. Yeah, I feel like um starting up and like learning in the Vancouver scene was like very interesting just because like we get so many crowds that are like super energetic but like don't know that much about wrestling, and like maybe even if they don't know about wrestling they're a big fan but they're like just a fan of that company or something, or like or maybe they're just
Okay.
like
Oh,
doing something on the weekend and like getting drinks and just having fun. but like very rarely do we get like crowds of actual wrestling fans. And then like going to places like Portland and Seattle, it's very interesting. Like you guys are you watch wrestling, you know what's going on, and like
Yes.
you'll probably pop for like some smaller like uh I don't know, interesting technical stuff that like I'm super stoked on. Um, so that was jarring when I first got there. I was like, oh man, okay, you guys care about that stuff. Good to know. Good to know. And then the LA scene. Um, I mean, it's just so crazy because there's two different layers to it, right? Like they have a great core scene. Like there's so many like talented indie wrestlers in California. I was so impressed. But then also it's LA, so like some shows just get so stacked with talent as well. Um, so I feel like it's almost like there's two scenes going on. It's very interesting.
Like an indie scene and then like a second tier, would you say? Or just like two different styles?
There's just like smaller shows where you get to see like some of the like really good guys coming out of like Santino Bros and stuff, and then sometimes there'll just be a show where since it's such a prominent city, like just the biggest talent on the indie scene will
Okay.
come in. You know?
Yeah, gotcha.
It's like the PWG when it used to run.
And then, so you're mostly working West Coast, right?
Yeah, mostly West Coast for now.
How far east have you been?
Not far. Not far at all. Like what, Edmonton, I guess, which like isn't far. I'd love to work on the East Coast though.
Isn't
it's
it?
like if you're looking at a world map, it's not that far, but I have to fly there, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How did Edmonton treat you?
Great. I mean, I was born in Alberta, so it's always nice to go over there. I've only worked for Love Pro, but like it's such a chill environment, and they have a very consistent crowd, so it's nice to come back and have people remember me for sure.
Hell yeah. And then, so what took you to Vancouver?
Oh, that's just, parents switching jobs and stuff. I left Alberta very early.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Word. Dude, Vancouver is tight. I've only been there like a little bit. I don't know what you dig, but the fucking metal scene in Vancouver is top tier shit.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell it kind of seeps into our wrestling scene too. Like WrestleCore is super like that vibe. Uh, but yeah, no, I like it over here. Portland's pretty similar though. Um, yeah.
Yeah, we love it. It's a good town. Pacific Northwest. All of it. As Andy
What was
said.
your first match in Portland?
Good question. Do I have to look at the notes for this? I might have to. Hold on.
You got notes?
Okay, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I saw, is it the match against Matt Brannigan?
I think so.
Prestige?
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, I think so.
How I mean, Prestige, it's a big one to like kind of start for Portland
us,
scene.
yeah.
Like how was that? How was that like that whole process?
Well, I mean, it was sweet. I mean, I've wanted to wrestle for Prestige for so long, so like that's not even going through my head. I'm like, oh, thank God we finally got it. You know, it was a very interesting way to debut for sure. But like, I was always so like, how did this work out so well between Brannigan and I? Because he was doing the whole like I don't flip thing, and I'm like, well, it's pretty funny that we're in the ring together.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just glad I got to string it together to a couple different Prestige shows and hopefully more in the future because yeah, love that crowd. Love that locker room too.
We're closing in on the end of a year. You're going hard. Top 3 goals for the next year. You got your sights set on some shit?
For the next year?
Yeah.
2025 goals.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to go back to LA in a more prominent manner. Just because I was training so much, I feel like there's more for me to achieve from an actual wrestling standpoint. I'd love to do that. It's definitely on my mind a lot. And the East Coast. There's some big companies in the Canadian East Coast that I'd love to get to. And I think by the end of next year, I could potentially get to the UK, but that's a long-term goal. Like I would love to
Okay.
at least train in the UK because like I said, it's some of my favorite wrestling.
Yeah, that British technical style.
Yeah.
I think one thing that kind of me and Danny have talked about a lot here is like the new like WWE ID stuff. For someone like you, like a performer that's young and like up and coming, how does that change like your aspect to anything, or is it kind of just back of mind, nothing to it, or like I guess what are your thoughts of it like being in the industry?
I mean, I think it's a great thing. I know a few people who have already gotten it, and I mean, it's one of the hardest parts about indie wrestling is like trying to hustle as much as you can, but you know, the money's always an issue. So if there's anything that can help an indie wrestler like not have to worry about that so much, I'm all for it. Um, and yeah, something like that popping up out of nowhere just makes you like more motivated to just keep working. Like you never know what's around the corner. You never know what these companies are thinking about, you know? And just remember that everybody's eye is always out there, you know? But yeah, I think it's great for the scene. Although
It's super interesting. Yeah, yeah, go for it.
I don't know that much about it. In case there's like something that I like, I don't know. I don't just cover my bases. I definitely have to read up more about it.
It no, like I I don't think there's anything I was able to find out about it. I think they're super secretive as to like what it even is or what it means. So
Or how
just
you partake in it, yeah. Like or what evaluates it, etc. It's very interesting, but it does point a spotlight onto the indies, which to your point, I think is great all around, right?
For sure.
I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on. I think one promotion that really caught my eye recently that I started like watching more of it's Boom. Like, and you've been there since I believe the start of it. How, I think like camera work looks awesome, and like production wise it just looks so different compared to a lot of other indie scenes. Like how has that been for you being part of that since like the start of it?
I mean, I feel like it's really the only one that I can say. I think I debuted on the second show actually. I was there for the first show, but I wasn't on it. But it's nice to say that I can like have a home promotion. Pretty like that's how I feel. That Boom is like my home promotion. That I look in the crowd and I'm like, these are my people. You know, they remember me. I remember them. It's nice. Um, and sky's the limit for them. Really, it's still so early on. We're only 3 seasons in for Boom. Um, but it's nice to be in on the ground floor for sure. Because like we were talking about, like Vancouver's scene is like I don't know, it's changed so much only in like the 2.5, 3 years that I've been around. So I'm like, has it always been like this? I don't know. I hope that it's just up and up for Boom and every other promotion in the scene for sure.
Sounds like
But
it's kind of like the same for like all of the Pacific Northwest. All of a sudden, within the last 2-3 years, it's been this big boom of more and more talent coming out of here, but also like all these promotions kind of stepping up their game, which is providing more content for everyone else, which is great to see.
yeah, yeah, it's nice to hear that. Like, I can go down to Portland and Seattle, and I hear wrestlers being like, "Oh yeah, I want to come work for Boom" and stuff like that. Uh, because I feel like it's always the other way. It's like we're always trying to get to Portland, but it's nice to hear that people actually want to come wrestle for our companies as well.
Yeah, we're trying to get a trip up there to catch one of the shows live. Honestly, we've been trying to figure that out. Which is funny just because like Canada, when you say Canada and wrestling, like they seem to kind of go hand in hand, but like Portland, yeah, we had Piper, Buddy Rose, but like, you know, it's interesting to hear that perspective that like that's going well down here. So yeah, it's been interesting how that's been a change recently. And wrestling in general. Um Do you like tag team wrestling? How do you feel about tag team wrestling?
How do I feel about watching it or doing it?
Doing it.
Doing it, you know, I've like as of very recently, I've been feeling like pretty motivated about tag team wrestling. Like it's just starting to click for
Yes.
me. So I'd say I'm
Okay.
a fan as of recently. Yeah.
Do you have anybody you'd like to tag with? Any shout outs? Anybody you could imagine yourself gelling with pretty well?
Uh, I mean, I just had a tag match. It was like when was it? Like a couple weeks ago at Boom, and I tagged with Amira, and it went really well. So if
Mm.
Boom or some other place gets us a tag again, I would love to do that. Um, and other than that, again, like if Miles DeVille ever comes back, he is coming back, but like whenever he does,
Sure.
we definitely have a very similar wrestling brain. But yeah, those are the two off the top of the dome for sure.
Nice. Good choices. Good
Yeah.
picks. Fuck yeah.
Um, I kind of wanted to ask you about your uh, Midnight Marauder. Where did that come from? What? How did that start?
Uh, yeah. Sometimes I forget that I'm still the Midnight Marauder. It's been so long. It's just like part of the identity at this point. But it's the Tribe Called Quest album for sure. It's a reference. Um, but also like I do have like quite a bit of history in like graffiti, and like I did a lot of graffiti growing up, and then that like kind of formed into me doing a lot of murals, um, which I still do. So uh, Midnight Marauder is a very succinct way of explaining what I've
Sure.
spent a lot of my life doing. So
So there's a lot of artistic input there. Does that brain ever cross over the sort of graphic illustrative into the wrestling? Or would you say that those are mutually exclusive for you?
no, I feel like they've completely
Meshed
meshed
into
together,
one?
and it's impossible to take them apart now. Yeah, because I mean it's so helpful that I can just design my own gear and T-shirts and stuff.
Shit,
So
yeah.
the
Yeah,
gear's all you.
yeah, like the graffiti
That's
on the side
awesome.
and I do a lot of gear designs for other wrestlers as well.
Oh, no
In the
way.
area, a lot of T-shirt designs and stuff. Uh, get a little bit of pocket change with that, so it's been pretty nice.
Yeah, so like let's keep going here though. Talking about like how that impacts, does it impact how you kind of view or put together matches when you're like putting together a mural maybe? Would you describe those experiences as similar or different?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think for that in particular.
Okay.
Um, I do think it's interesting how all the art forms I've chosen are like very like is ephemeral the right word? Where you watch a match and I guess it gets recorded, but it's definitely like the experience in
I
that
mean,
moment.
yeah, it's pretty ephemeral. That I think
Yeah,
that's the correct word.
yeah, and then like with graffiti, I'll make like the most like the proudest piece I've done, and then a week later it's gone. But
It's
it's the
gone,
feeling that I
right?
had seeing it done. It's the same as finishing a match and walking back to the back.
And you're like, it's
So
over.
yeah. So the
Are
process maybe
you?
not, but the feeling
Yeah.
yes for sure.
Like I was gonna say, like when you're ready to go do a piece like a mural, is that premeditated, or are you kind of going with the flow and how you're feeling and what colors you have? How does that work?
Yeah. I mean, definitely going with what I have in the bank for sure. And
Sure.
it's you know what now these are such good questions. I've never thought about this, but it is kind of similar because at first with graffiti like I was so like, oh, I don't want to mess this up. I'm sketching and I'm putting so many like guidelines down and stuff, but then once you get used to it you can just flow and do it and you don't need any of that. And wrestling's kind of similar. Like once you really
You're
find
calling it.
yourself and what you
You're
do,
calling it
like
on the wall,
yeah, for sure.
and then you're calling it in the ring when you're comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. It is kind of similar.
That's I always find it fascinating because more often than not, we do talking to people. There is another artistic pursuit that somehow fits in, and I think and maybe you could speak a little bit about it. It's really hard to define what a wrestler is. Like, what is a wrestler to you? Is it a performer? Is it an athlete? Is it something in between? Can you talk a little bit about that now that you've
Yeah.
been doing it for a little bit?
I mean, it's both, and it's a lot of things. And I feel like the more open you are with yourself about like how many things it is, like the easier it gets. You know, like you can't just pretend that you're an athlete or just pretend that you're a performer. Like you're both. But that's like what's fun about it. Like that's why I want to do it. That's why so many people want to do it. I bet. Like the more aware you are of everything, like the more fun it is. Like that's why it's so fun. It's the most complete creative expression that I found, at least, because you get to do everything.
Dude, yes. That was fucking
Very
awesome.
well put.
Thank you.
What would you advise somebody, what advice would you give yourself maybe even before you even started going into this, down this journey?
What advice would I give myself? I just know I did an interview with Wes Smith recently, and he asked me a similar question. And then I read my answer, and I was like, it's not wrong, but I want to elaborate more. So I'm
What was that
thinking
answer?
my answer was, what advice would I give myself in the last year is like to not just focus on wrestling and to like give time to like your family and people who are important to you because it's not forever. And you know, I don't know. There were some moments where I focused a little too much on wrestling and lost time that I'll never get back with other things in my life. So I'm a bit more aware of that now. And you know, yeah, that is the answer. That's what it is. And I mean, that's funny because I immediately this year just like left and only wrestled. But you know, um, maybe that's why I needed that advice.
I mean, do you think there's something to be said about sacrifice for the art, though? I mean, and in that, those are kind of the sacrifices you got to make to do what you love. And in that way, it kind of,
Yes,
but
but
you learn.
also there are some things that there were some reps that I got that I was like that wasn't necessary, you know?
Got it.
Like some very small shows where I didn't learn anything and um in that moment like there were some things in life that could have been more valuable. But of course, you're going to make these sacrifices and I have made these sacrifices and I will make more. That's just part of the game.
Absolutely. Constantly growing perspective as well and awareness, I would imagine.
Oh, we're back.
We lost him again.
Cool. There we go.
I don't know if you caught what Danny said.
No, I didn't.
But just constantly growing perspective and like awareness, I think, is continually shifting when you're really far deep into like an art form, especially one as physical as the stuff that you guys are doing,
For
you
sure.
know?
Yeah.
That's great stuff. I think the way that you put it together too is just for you to understand that at your age and like in the where you are right now is only gonna like make you that much better. So it's really cool to hear. I mean, there's not a lot of people I would say that probably have that approach of thinking about I need to spend my time with my family. I need to do this because it's like I mean, with every profession, things get in the way.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just saying, is there a gimmick match or a match type that you haven't done that you kind of want to do or have interest of doing?
Okay. Sweet. Great question. Um, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I feel like we always joke about it in Vancouver that we're like, where's the Ultimate X match at? Well, who's gonna book the Ultimate X match?
Damn.
Um, it's like I think yesterday in training, we were like, look at this. This would be a great Ultimate X match. So yeah, putting it out there, somebody, please.
Yeah, what's it gonna
Um,
take? Let's see it.
yeah, I would love that. Other than that, though, like I think any opportunity to have a longer match would be great for my like progression. So like best 2 out of 3 falls or like 30-minute Ironman, 60-minute Ironman. Like that's really interesting to me just because like I haven't had that many long matches.
cardio, right? That's
Yeah,
and
yeah. What am I
also
doing all this cardio for? I gotta show
and
up.
also staying on top of it. Yeah. So yeah, so Iron Man for me, an Iron Man's always 60. I don't do the 30.
You don't do the 30.
I don't do it at all, really. I sit and I fucking uh Iron Man match, X fucking match. Yes, those are great choices.
Yeah. One that we don't see a lot of. I mean, even in TNA, like they don't really do it. It's such a great match type. Like more of that, or some kind of like innovative, different
Yeah,
way of doing that.
Ultimate
I don't really know. Yeah.
Yeah, do we need to pick another
Something
letter
else.
here?
Ultimate
Just
O.
because
I don't know.
they have the X on some sort of trademark. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
do a circle. Do a Y.
We'll get it done regardless. Someday, somehow.
I mean, there's with yourself and like the amount of talent, I think there's money there. So
Yeah.
who's gonna do it?
I mean, also, how can you play that too in both sides? How could you do an X Division match combined with a longer time limit?
Man, I don't know. This
So essentially,
this is a question for a promoter right now.
we're all creative minds here. I'm sure we
Yeah.
could think of something. Perhaps every 20 minutes or every 15 minutes is when the above letter of choice, of untrademarked choice, begins to get connected.
Oh, so there's different letters.
So there's different letters.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah.
maybe
It's
when
like
you
an
start
Iron
the match,
Survivor match, but like more time,
God,
and there's a
that
big
is-
X in the sky.
that's such
pretty
a
much.
bizarre one, but that's like the most recent one where I was like, this is a very bizarre, like, they're thinking of new stuff. That's all I gotta say. Whether it's like solid or not, like, I like the fact that at least we're getting a little innovative with our gimmick matches. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I watched the last one. I enjoyed it. I think it's fun. I hope it doesn't like burn out, but we've had Elimination Chamber for like 15 years at this point. And
Yeah,
people still like
we
it. So,
have.
yeah, it's cool.
We actually, yes, we did a whole episode where we tried to think
Come up with new ones.
Yeah. They're not great.
There were some really
ever
out there ones.
Wrestle in the back of a refrigerator truck, kind of like King of the Road, but in an ice truck. We got ideas up the waz.
All right, I'll go back. I'll watch it. I'll let you know what I think.
The Iron Survivor is actually it was interesting. I think the one thing that like stood out to me was the double pin for a 2-pointer.
Yeah,
I don't know. To me, it was just like that's such a you could just stack everyone and get 4 points like off them.
But that's really hard to do.
I mean, sure, but it's just like to win in such a fast time and just by pinning 2 people should have counted as 1 point.
yeah. Maybe just getting like 2 back to back might have been like less people would be bothered with that. But hey, I mean, I'm not about to tell that guy. I'm not about to tell that guy no. Like,
Obafemi.
Yeah, go for it. Pin all of them. Yeah,
That's very fair. Yeah, you're not really in an advantageous debate spot with a man like of such size.
man.
All right. We're gonna go ahead. We've kind of already touched on it a little bit. Andy, I'm about to go to the Mount Rushmore. What's your Mount Rushmore? You got 4 of your, of wrestlers.
Rushmore. Like, are we talking all time, or are we talking like to me, like to like my favorite?
What's the difference?
I've never even thought about an all time because I feel like it doesn't even pertain to me and like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's what pertains to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of what's kind of making you into the performer you are.
But also it's just like, it's your all time. It's not, it should never be the objective all time. It's your all time.
For sure.
What's your all time Mount Rushmore?
I'm going to try and like make it as well rounded as I can.
Great start. Yeah.
Just because I'm like, I don't know. I grew up watching a lot of like 2010s stuff, 2000s, 2010s. So I'm going to try and make it well rounded. So I'm just going to say Eddie Guerrero off the bat. Yeah. Like as a Frog Splash user, it'd be messed up if I didn't say that.
Yeah. Finally, someone says Eddie Guerrero.
Dude,
do people not say Eddie Guerrero?
No.
You sound disappointed.
He's on mine.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And then like definitely punk. I feel like I had two waves of enjoying punk, like as a kid, and then going back and watching Ring of Honor and like IWA Mid South and being like, oh, okay, so he's still like my favorite.
You keep up with what he's doing now, more or less?
More or less, yeah. I definitely watched his AEW run because there was some good stuff in there.
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
I agree.
And put an Io Shirai as the third.
Oh,
Ooh, nice.
Very, very influential to my work for sure. And then probably got a oh man, 4 is so hard.
It's always the last one where it's like, yo, I got these 3, and then it's like 4. It's like that one's kind of always the one you depends on what day for me.
Like
you
5 would be so much easier. Like because I think I'd have to cut like Hayabusa and put Prince Devitt, Finn Balor. Like I have to do that.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I think that's my most influential 4 to me.
Dude, that makes a lot of sense with the way that you work in the ring, though. That's why it should always be a personal one, because it tells a story, whether you intend to or not. That shit tells a fucking story. I think that's a beautiful Mount Rushmore. Love it.
Yeah. Oh man, I still like you'll never feel good about it. I'm like Zack Sabre isn't on there.
No, you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll regret half of them
for sure. And
then we'll have to do this all again. Yeah. Excellent. We're getting close. What have you got planned? Plug your stuff to the listeners. What's coming up for you? How can they find you? This is your promo time. What do you got?
The next biggest thing coming up for me is the Boom New Year's show, where Lance Storm's refereeing my match, which is insane, against Evan Rivers.
That's crazy.
Yeah, one more go with Evan Rivers. We'll see who the best man is, and yeah, hopefully more Portland-bound and Seattle-bound trips in the future. I'd really love to be back at DOA and Prestige as soon as I can. And yeah, people can find me at Casey Ferreira with an _ on Instagram, and then just Casey Ferreira PW on Twitter, where I'm definitely more active on Instagram though. So
seems like everyone is.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I don't even like. I don't avoid Twitter, but it's tough to be on Twitter now.
Yeah. Elliot Tyler tweets for me, so if he's not around, then I'm not really getting any tweets out.
Not really doing much.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, listeners, for listening to our interview here with Casey. And you can follow us at Pacific Wrestling Network on Instagram, on YouTube. Audio versions are going to be on Spotify and Apple, and you can catch the video version on YouTube. So thank you all, and remember,
be glorious.